Picture the Taj Mahal, and you probably see plain white marble, smooth and cool and bare, but run your hand along the lower walls and you would feel flowers, thousands of them, set into the stone, each petal cut from a different gem. The pale green jade came from China. The deep evening blue of the lapis came from the mountains of Afghanistan. The warm red of the carnelian was carried up from Arabia, so a single inlaid blossom, no wider than your palm, holds stone gathered from 3 continents, a quiet map of half the world's trade routes, pressed by hand into a tomb. This is a quiet place to fall asleep and to wake up knowing one small thing you did not know before. So let yourself settle now. Loosen your shoulders. Let the pillow take the weight of your head. There is nothing to solve tonight, and nothing you need to hold on to. Let the day drift somewhere behind you, and let your breathing slow, soft, and even. Tonight we travel to the bank of a slow river in India. Almost 400 years ago, we will follow 20 years and more than 20,000 pairs of hands as they raise a tomb of white marble beside the water. It began as the most beautiful things sometimes do with a loss. Long before there was any marble, there was a woman, and there was a journey she did not choose. Her name was Taj Mahal, and in the early summer of 1631, she was far from home. She had gone south with the emperor, her husband, into the high dry country of the Deccan, where his armies were on campaign. This was not unusual for her. Through 19 years of marriage she had traveled at his side, through cities and across rivers, through good seasons and hard ones. Where he went, she tended to go. She was, by every account, the steady center of his restless life, the one he trusted, the one he kept near even on the long roads of war. And in that summer she was carrying their child. By now she had carried 13 before this one, and so the rhythm of it was familiar, even on the road, even in a war camp under canvas, even with the dust of the South on everything. But this birth went wrong. The labor stretched on through the night and into the next, hour after slow hour, around 30 hours in all. Imagine the helplessness of those around her, the court physicians, the women who had attended every birth before, the husband waiting somewhere close, able to do nothing but wait. And in the small dark of a tent at a place called Burhanpur, on the 17th of June, she died not long after the child was born. She was, by the count the chroniclers kept, giving birth to her 14th. Let that settle for a moment, softly. The most famous monument to love in the world did not begin with a wedding, or a palace, or a crown. It began with a death in childbirth, in a tent, more than 1,000 kilometers from the river where the marble would one day stand. There was no white dome that night. There was no garden, no pool, no inlaid flower. There was only a war camp and grief and a newborn child and a long way still to travel. She was not brought home at once. There was no way to be. The campaign was far from Agra, and the heat of an Indian summer is no friend to such a journey. So her body was laid, for a time, in a walled pleasure garden beside the Tapti River, a quiet green place that had long belonged to the family. It was meant to be temporary, and it was. Picture that first resting place. Old trees, still water, the sound of the river going by, a green stillness far to the south. She lay there through the worst of the heat, while somewhere a grieving man began, slowly, to think about what should be done. Months later, in the cooler weather near the year's end, she was lifted from that first garden and carried north. The accounts say she travelled in a golden casket, escorted along the long road by her own son and by trusted men of the court. Try to picture that procession moving slowly across the winter plains of India, the dust raised by the horses and the carts, the torches at evening when they made camp, the careful, deliberate pace of men who are carrying something they cannot afford to jostle, mile after mile, day after day. It would have taken weeks. Whole villages would have come out to watch it pass and to wonder who it was that travelled so slowly and so guarded. And at the end of it all, in Agra, she was laid in a small building on the bank of the Yamuna River, near the very spot where everything else would one day rise. So the great tomb came after the grief, not before. That is worth holding on to gently, because it quietly changes how you see the white domes. They were not planned the way you might plan a garden or a hall coolly in advance for some future use. They were an answer, a reply to something that had already happened and could not be undone. Every stone that would later be raised was raised against an absence. The building is, in the end, the shape of a missing person, drawn very large and very carefully against the sky, and the grief by every account that survives was real. The court chroniclers of the time wrote a great deal about it, more than they usually allowed themselves to write about such private things. They wrote that the emperor withdrew, that he kept to himself for a long stretch, something close to a year, away from the public business of ruling, away from the ceremonies and the audiences that were the daily life of a king. And when at last he came back into the light of the court, they wrote he had changed. His hair had turned white, his back was bent, his face was worn down, as though the months had been years pressed into one. Whether every detail is exact, we cannot know. Chroniclers were courtiers, and they wrote in part to please and to flatter. But the shape of the story rings true. A man came apart, quietly, in private, and then slowly, over many seasons, set himself to building something that would outlast his sorrow. Now here is where a much darker story usually arrives, and tonight we can gently set it aside. You may have heard it. It is one of the most repeated tales about this place. They say that when the great work was finished, the emperor had the hands of his craftsmen cut off, so that nothing so beautiful could ever be made again by human hands. It is a vivid story. It has been told for centuries, in many languages, around many fires, and there is no evidence for it at all. None. No court record mentions it. No Persian history. No chronicle of the time. None of the European travelers who came to Agra in those years and wrote down in careful detail everything they saw and heard. A thing so terrible would have been remarked upon. It is not, and we have instead the opposite. We can trace many of these very craftsmen afterward, moving on to other works, other cities, other commissions across the empire. their hands plainly intact, still cutting stone, still setting jewels, still writing their flowing letters on other walls. The cruelty is a later invention, a dark seasoning added to the story long after the fact, because we seem to feel that something so beautiful must have a shadow behind it. But the truth is gentler. The men who built this place lived to build again. They carried their skill onward into other lives. Let that small mercy stay with you. What the work truly demanded was not cruelty but time. Astonishing amounts of it, though we will not raise our voices about the number. The first stones were set around the year 1632, not long after the casket reached Agra, and the whole of it, the tomb and its gateway and its mosque and its long enclosing walls and its water and its gardens, would not be finished for something near 22 years. 22 years. Let the length of that breathe for a moment. A child born in the year the foundations were dug would have been grown by the time the last flower was set into the last wall. Perhaps married, perhaps a parent, perhaps already grey at the temples. An entire small lifetime of growing up could pass in the span of this one building's becoming. Think of the patience folded inside that. We tend to imagine great buildings simply appearing, as though a single royal decision could conjure them whole out of the ground. But this was a slow thing, a daily thing. 2 decades of ordinary mornings when ordinary men walked down to the riverbank and took up exactly where they had set things down the evening before. Seasons of monsoon rain that swelled the river and stopped the work, and long dry seasons that let it go on, the water rising and falling against the bank, the same patch of earth returned to again and again and again, until something that should have been impossible stood there in the light. Consider too what it means to grieve at the scale of an empire. Most of us mourn quietly. We keep a photograph. We visit a grave once a year. We carry the loss inside us, where no one can see it. But here was a man who could command stone. He could command rivers and roads and the labor of thousands. His grief had somewhere to go. It could be poured outward into the world. It could be made enormous. It could be made to last. Most of us could never build a thing like this, but most of us know the feeling underneath it, the wish to turn a loss into something that endures, the wish that the person we lost should not simply slip out of the world and be gone. There is a quiet comfort in that thought. The Taj Mahal is famous as a wonder, a marvel, a thing people cross the world to see. But underneath all the fame, it is a very human thing. It is a husband who could not bear that his wife be forgotten. That is all it is in the end. A long, patient refusal to let her go. Think of the river too, and why it was chosen. The Yamuna is slow and wide and very old. It had watched the city of Agra grow on its banks for centuries. One day it would carry the reflection of the white marble. It would hold the moon and the changing light of 10,000 evenings. To build beside a river is to build beside something always moving and never quite gone. The water flows away, and yet the river stays. Perhaps that suited the feeling, a grief that moves and changes and somehow remains. But none of that exists yet, none of the marble, none of the flowers, not one of the towers. There is only the plan, taking slow shape in the mind of a grieving king and the minds of his quiet architects. There is only the small first tomb on the bank, the empty marked out ground, the long river going by. Everything we will see in the hours ahead is still only an idea, a drawing on paper, a wish that someone could not sleep without. And it is worth sitting just for a moment with how small all great things begin. A wonder of the world began as one man's sorrow. A mountain of marble began as a single sketched line. 20,000 workers began as a single decision made quietly in the dark by someone who had lost the person he loved most. For now, picture only the very beginning, the small first tomb on the riverbank, where she lay while the great plans were drawn. The wide flat ground all around it, marked out with cords and wooden stakes, empty and waiting, the slow brown river sliding past in the dusk, catching the last copper light of the day. A few oil lamps lit along the water's edge, and somewhere nearby, perhaps standing very still, an emperor with white hair before his time, looking at an empty space, beginning to imagine what could ever be made worthy enough to fill it. Long before the marble came, though, there came the people who would carry it and cut it and raise it. And it is to them, to the thousands of hands, that we gently turn next. If you had stood on that riverbank a year or two later, the quiet would have been gone. In its place there would have been a sound you could feel in your chest, the sound of a great many people at work, hammers on stone, voices calling in a dozen tongues, wheels and hooves, and the creak of rope. A city had grown up out of nothing, on the edge of the water, and it was made of people who had come from everywhere to build one thing. The accounts tell us there were more than 20,000 workers. 20,000. Try to picture a crowd that size, and then try to picture it not gathered for a single afternoon, but living there day after day for years on end. They came from far away and from close by, from across India, of course, from its many regions and its many peoples, but also from Persia, from the Ottoman lands far to the west, from the cities of Central Asia, from places whose names most of the workers laboring beside them would never have heard spoken aloud. A whole small world had quietly assembled itself on the edge of one river, for one purpose, under one sky, and this was not a faceless mass of muscle. Within that enormous crowd there was a smaller, brighter circle, a creative core, and the old accounts even try to name and number them. They speak of around 37 master craftsmen, each one the very finest at a single particular thing. Let us walk slowly past them, the way you might walk past the stalls of a great market, looking at each in turn. There were sculptors said to have come from Bukhara in Central Asia, whose hands knew how to coax living shape out of stubborn stone. There were calligraphers from Syria and from Persia who could write the curve of a single letter so that it looked like breath made visible. There were inlayers from the south of India, patient beyond ordinary patience, who set tiny chips of colored stone into the marble one at a time. There were stone cutters from Baluchistan, far to the west. There was, the accounts say, a specialist who built nothing but turrets, the small crowning towers. And there was one man, just one, whose entire art was the carving of flowers. Stay with that last one for a moment, because it is the kind of detail that opens a whole life. Imagine waking each morning for years to carve flowers in marble, petals, and the soft curl of a leaf, and the fine line of a stem, over and over, in stone that does not forgive a mistake. A whole life given to making blossoms that would never wilt, never close, never drop. We do not know his name, but somewhere in that white building, his flowers are still open, exactly as he left them 400 years on. Over all of them, by tradition, stood a chief architect. His name is usually given as Ustad Ahmad Lahari, a man born in Lahore and trained in the Persian way of building, where geometry and beauty were studied as the same thing. We should be honest and say that the records are not perfectly clear, and that a work this large was never truly the vision of one mind alone. It was a collaboration, a braid of many masters, each one pulling their own bright thread through the whole. But Lahori is the name that comes down to us as the one who held the entire shape in his head, the one who knew before any of it stood where every line would meet every other line, and how the parts would gather into a single calm whole. It is strange to think that a man who built turrets all day worked beside a man who carved only flowers, and neither could do the other's work. Each was a master, each was helpless at the other's craft. They needed each other. The whole great crowd was like that. 1,000 narrow gifts, leaning together, holding up one shared thing. No one was the whole of it. Everyone was needed. That is how the impossible gets made. Now here is a small thing that says something surprisingly large. With all these thousands of hands, all these masters of their separate crafts, only one man was ever permitted to sign his name upon the building itself. Only one out of 20,000. He was a calligrapher, and his name was Amanat Khan. His script runs across the great archways in flowing letters, verses chosen with care, dark against the white, and there, woven discreetly into the very work, he was allowed to leave his own name behind. No sculptor signed, no inlayer, no architect, not the man who carved only flowers. They poured their entire lives into the stone and then stepped back, quietly, into anonymity, content to be forgotten. But the calligrapher signed. Whatever the reason was, it tells you how highly that one art was held above the others. The written word in that world sat very close to the sacred. To shape a holy verse beautifully was itself a kind of devotion, and it was honored as such. Think now, for a slow moment, about what it took simply to feed and house 20,000 people in one place, for years. This is the part that history rarely lingers on, and it is worth a long, easy breath. Every one of those workers had to eat, every single day. Every one had to sleep somewhere, dry and safe enough to rise and work again. Every one had to be paid, or fed, or both, by someone keeping careful count. So around the great building site, there grew a second thing, a whole town of the living, with cooking fires and grain stores, and water carriers and animals, and the low constant murmur of many languages braided together. At evening, the smoke from the cook fires would have risen in 100 thin grey columns into the cooling air. There would have been the smell of bread and lentils and dust and wood smoke all together, the clatter of tools being set down for the night, men washing the pale stone grit from their arms and faces in the river, while the light went gold and then soft. It was, in its quiet way, one of the great gatherings of its age, and almost none of those who made it up have left us their names. Picture one of them, just one, at the end of a day, a stone-cutter, say. His hands are pale with dust, his arms ache. He has shaped the same kind of block since morning. He does not know he is building a wonder. He knows only this block, and the next, and the light beginning to fail. He washes in the river, he eats, he lies down, and tomorrow he will rise and do it again. That is how wonders are made. Not in a burst, one tired evening at a time. Now multiply that by 20,000. 20,000 tired evenings, every single day, for 20 years. The mind cannot quite hold it. So do not try to hold it. Just let it be vast, and let it go. And then there were the animals, because human hands alone, however many, could never have moved what had to be moved. The accounts speak of long teams of oxen, perhaps 1,000 of them, perhaps more, harnessed in their patient rows to heavy wagons, of camels for the lighter loads, swaying along the roads, of buffalo for the heavy and the slow. Even the roads themselves had to be made stronger than ordinary roads, reinforced and graded and smoothed, simply to bear the weight of what would travel along them, because something was already coming to this riverbank from very far away, dragged league by patient league across the breadth of the country, the white stone that would one day become the smooth, cool skin of the whole building. Stay a while longer in that camp before we follow the stone. It is worth seeing the people clearly. Think of the languages first. On any given morning, on that one stretch of riverbank, you would have heard a dozen tongues at once. Persian, various tongues of India, the speech of Central Asia, the speech of the Ottoman lands, words for stone, and for water, and for bread, passed from hand to hand, learned roughly, half by gesture. A whole working language must have grown up there, made of scraps, enough to say lift, and hold, and higher, and stop, enough to build a wonder of the world. Think of the skills too, and how narrow each one was. One man knew only flowers, another knew only turrets, another spent his days grinding colors, another did nothing but smooth and polish marble until it shone like still water. Each one had given his whole life to a single small thing, and only together, all those narrow skills laid side by side, did the building become possible. No one person could have made it. No one person even saw the whole of it clearly. It lived only in the way the parts fit together. There is something gentle in that if you sit with it. We tend to remember the kings and the architects, the famous names, but the building is really made of the unnamed. The man who carved flowers, the woman who carried water to the workers in the heat, the driver who walked beside the oxen, the cook who fed 1,000 mouths at dusk. None of them are remembered. All of them are still here, in the stone, in everything that stands, and think how slowly it must have grown from their point of view. Not all at once, not in a season. A worker might spend a whole year on a single wall. He might see the dome rise only a little in all that time. Children were born in that camp, surely. Some grew up there. To them, the great unfinished building was simply the world, the thing that had always been rising and always would be. They could not imagine it finished any more than we can imagine our own lives finished while we are living them. For now, though, stay with the people. Let the picture soften into evening. The day's work has ended. The masters have set down their chisels and their brushes and their fine small tools. The great crowd is settling slowly towards sleep in its makeshift town, the fires burning low, the voices dropping one by one, the river moving past in the dark as it always does and always will. Tomorrow they will rise before the light and begin again, as they will for years to come. They do not know, most of them, that anything of their names will ever be remembered. They only know the work in front of their hands, and the stone that is coming, and the simple ache of a body that has labored well and now may rest. And so, even as the camp grew quiet and the last fire dimmed, the long roads to the west were already busy in the dark with that stone. Let us follow them gently and see where it all came from. The white marble did not belong to Agra. It was a stranger there, brought from elsewhere, and the bringing of it was an undertaking all its own, as great in its way as the building it would become. It came from a place called Makrana, in the dry hills of Rajasthan, more than 300 kilometers to the west. That distance sounds small to us now, an afternoon's easy drive on a smooth road, but there were no engines then, no smooth roads, nothing but muscle and patience and the long flat country in between. Every single block of marble cut from the Makrana quarries had to be hauled the whole of that distance overland by the strength of animals and men. The stone was loaded onto heavy wagons, and the wagons were pulled by long teams of oxen, sometimes dozens of animals to a single load, leaning together into their harnesses across the plains under the wide sky. It is said the roads themselves had to be specially built to carry these loads, reinforced and smoothed and kept in repair, because an ordinary track would simply have given way beneath the weight and swallowed a wheel to the axle. Picture just one block then, gleaming and pale and enormous, inching across the brown countryside under the white sun. A small, slow event that would have drawn watchers from every village it crawled past. The creak of the wood, the dust hanging in the still air, the drivers walking beside the oxen, calling to them softly. Now picture that happening again and again and again, not once but countless times, season after season, for years, until a small mountain's worth of white stone had been carried, piece by careful piece, across the heart of India to the edge of one river. The patience of it is hard to hold in the mind. Each block was a journey. Each journey was weeks, and the building would need them by the hundred. And the marble, remember, was only the beginning. It was the plain canvas, the white ground on which everything else would be drawn. The colors that would be set into it came from even further away. And this is the part of the story that still quietly astonishes if you let it. The little flowers inlaid in the walls, the climbing vines, the delicate borders that run along the lower stone were not painted on. Paint fades, paint flakes. These were made of stone, real stone, each shade a different mineral dug from the earth, and those minerals were gathered from across the whole of the known world and carried here to be cut into pieces no larger than a fingernail. Let your mind wander along their long routes for a moment, slowly the way a caravan wanders. The deep blue, the color of a sky just after sunset, was lapis lazuli, and it came down out of the mountains of Afghanistan, where it had been mined for thousands of years. The pale green jade and clear bright crystal came from China, carried over high passes and along trade roads that had moved silk and treasure for 1,000 years before this. Turquoise came down from Tibet, the color of a winter sky. Sapphire was brought from the green island of Sri Lanka, far to the south across the sea. The warm orange red of carnelian came up from Arabia. Jasper came from the Punjab, closer to home. By tradition, there were around 28 different kinds of stone in all, 28 colors of the earth, each one quarried in a different land, each one carried by a different long road to this single point on a riverbank, all to be cut into slivers and set, one beside another, into the channels of a single marble flower. So when you look at one of those inlaid blossoms, you are looking at a thing assembled from half a continent and more, a flower that could only ever have bloomed because trade routes crossed, and merchants traveled, and the world for once sent its scattered treasures toward one quiet place to be made into beauty. There is something almost tender in it. Stones that began in mountains thousands of miles apart, that never could have met, lying now side by side forever in a petal the size of your thumbnail. Hold one of those finished flowers in your mind, just one, a small bloom in the white wall. Look closely at it. The petals are red, the leaves are green, the heart is blue. Each color is a different stone. Each stone came from a different land, and the joins between them are so fine you cannot feel them. Run a finger across, and it is smooth, glass smooth, cool, as though the flower had grown there in the marble, all on its own. It did not, of course. Someone made it. Someone chose each chip of color. Someone cut it and fitted it and set it and moved on to the next. There are thousands of such flowers, tens of thousands of such chips, and every one was placed by a hand, slowly with care. No machine, no shortcut, just patience and an eye and time. That is the thing to hold, perhaps. The whole vast building is made of small things, done well, one at a time. A flower, a letter, a block, a chip of blue, none of them grand on its own, all of them grand together. The wonder is only the sum of a great deal of quiet, careful, ordinary work. There is another thing worth knowing here, because it gently corrects the picture most of us carry in our heads. We think of the Taj Mahal as a building of pure white marble, and only that. But the white marble is only the central tomb itself, the rest of the great complex, and it is vast, far larger than most people imagine, was built of red sandstone. The mosque that stands to one side is red sandstone. The matching building on the other side, the one called the Jawab, which means the answer, built for no purpose but to balance the mosque and keep the whole symmetrical, is red sandstone too. The tall gateway you pass through to enter, and the long high walls that enclose the whole, all of it is deep warm red, so the white tomb does not stand alone and pale against the empty sky, the way the photographs suggest. It sits at the very heart of a wide frame of glowing red, and the white seems all the whiter, all the more luminous, for the red that surrounds it. The builders understood deeply that beauty needs a setting, the way a single jewel needs the plain band that holds it. It is worth a slow breath, the thought of how far the colors traveled. A blue stone leaves a mountain in Afghanistan. It crosses passes, it crosses rivers, it changes hands in a dozen markets, it travels for a year, perhaps more, and it ends as a single petal, smaller than a coin, in a wall beside an Indian river. It will never move again. It will sit there, that one blue chip, for as long as the building stands, quiet, finished, home at last. Think of all the stones like that, each one with its long journey behind it, each one come to rest. The wall is full of travelers that have stopped traveling, full of far places gathered into one near place and held still. There is a kind of peace in that, to have come so far and arrived, and to need to go no further. All of this, the stone and the labor and the long roads, cost a fortune that is hard to carry across 4 centuries and set down in terms we know. The figure that comes down to us is something near 32 million rupees of the time, and whatever exactly that meant in that age, it meant the wealth of an entire empire turned, for 2 decades, toward a single grieving purpose. But we will not dwell on the number. Money is perhaps the least interesting thing about this place. It only helps to know that nothing here was cheap, and nothing was easy, and nothing at all was hurried. Sit for a moment with the strangeness of all that travel. The stone did not know where it was going. It was only stone, lapis in a mountain in Afghanistan, jade in a Chinese hillside, carnelian in the Arabian sand. None of it had ever met, none of it ever could have on its own. And then a grieving king in India wished for a flower, and the world began slowly to move. Think of how many hands touched a single piece of stone before it reached the wall. The miner who dug it, the trader who bought it, the driver who carried it over the mountains, the merchant who sold it on, the boatman perhaps who ferried it across a sea, another driver, another road, and at last the craftsman who cut it into a sliver no bigger than your fingernail and set it into a petal. A dozen hands across thousands of miles for one small chip of color, and the wall holds thousands of them. We rarely think of beauty as a thing carried, but all of it here was carried. Every white block came on a wagon. Every bright stone came on a road. Nothing simply appeared. Someone hauled it in the heat for weeks, and was tired at the end of the day, and rose and did it again. The building is, in a quiet way, a monument to roads, to the patience of animals, to the long, slow movement of heavy things across the surface of the earth. And it was all done without a single machine. No engine, no crane as we would know one, only muscle and rope and timber and the lever and the wheel and the ramp, the oldest tools there are, the same tools more or less that raised the pyramids 2,000 years before. People forget how recent our machines are. For almost all of human history, everything heavy was moved by living strength alone. The marble of the Taj is no different. It rose on the backs of animals and on the shoulders of men, and on nothing else. Let the workshops fill your mind now, and let the imagined day be warm and slow and unhurried. In one long shed, blocks of Makrana marble waiting to be dressed and smoothed, their surfaces still rough from the quarry. In another, a low table scattered with chips of color, lapis and carnelian and jade and turquoise, sorted into little bright heaps like spices laid out in a market stall. A craftsman bent close over a marble panel, choosing a single sliver of red, turning it in the light, fitting it into its carved channel, lifting it away again, shaving it finer, fitting it once more, until at last it sits flush and perfect and seamless, so that you could run your finger across the join and feel nothing at all. The patience of that work is almost a kind of prayer. No one is rushing him. No one could. The flower he is making will outlast everyone in the room. It will outlast their children and their children's children. There is no hurry here. There is all the time in the world. The stone has come then from the ends of the earth and been gathered into this one place. Now it has to be raised and shaped and made somehow to stand. And the ways the builders found to do that, the quiet cleverness hidden just beneath all the beauty, is where we gently go next. Here is a gentle secret about the Taj Mahal. Almost nothing about it is quite as straight or as simple as it looks. The builders fooled the eye again and again on purpose, with great care and great patience, so that the whole would seem even more perfect than perfection itself. The calm you feel when you look at it is not an accident. It was made, line by line, by people thinking very hard about how you would see. Start with the 4 tall minarets, the slender towers that stand one at each corner of the great marble platform. To anyone looking, they rise perfectly upright, perfectly parallel, framing the dome between them like the careful frame around a painting. But they are not upright, not one of them. Each one leans very slightly outward, away from the tomb at its center. The lean is small, so small you would never catch it with the naked eye, never sense it standing there, and the reason most often given for it is a quiet kind of foresight. Should the ground ever shake hard enough to bring a tower down, a tower already leaning outward would fall outward, away from the precious dome, rather than crashing inward upon the very thing it was built to protect. The lean is real, beyond any doubt. Whether the builders meant it as earthquake insurance, or whether that explanation was added later to fit a thing already done, scholars still gently disagree. But the towers do lean outward, that much is certain, and the lean does another quiet thing as well. It corrects the way our eyes bend tall verticals when we look up at them, so that towers which actually slant outward read from the ground as flawlessly, restfully true. Either way, the lesson hidden in the stone is the same one we keep finding here. What looks effortless was arranged with enormous care. The ease is the achievement, and here is the gentle part. None of it shows. You stand before the towers and they look straight. That is all. The care is invisible. The cleverness disappears into calm. You feel only that something is right and restful, and you do not know why. That is the whole intention, to hide the work and leave only the peace. Look next at the writing. Bands of beautiful calligraphy frame the great arched doorway. The verses we spoke of earlier flowing in dark stone against the white. Stand at the base of that arch and look up the long lines, and they seem perfectly even in size from bottom to top, each letter the calm twin of the others, marching upward in good order, but they are not the same size, not nearly. The letters higher up are larger, taller, wider, heavier than the ones below them. They have to be, because they are further from your eye, and a letter far away looks smaller than the same letter near, the way a friend at the end of a long road looks small. So the calligrapher made the high letters bigger by just the right amount to cancel that distance out. Exactly. The result is that everything appears even and uniform, when in plain fact nothing is. You are being shown a corrected world, tuned so carefully to the very spot where a person tends to stand and look, that you never once notice the tuning at all. You simply feel that it is right. It helps to remember that they had no way to see this from above, no way to rise up and check the whole. They worked from the ground, and from scaffolds, and from drawings on paper. The perfect symmetry, the matched towers, the balanced halves, all of it was held in the mind and trusted to the measurements. They could not step back and look down the way we can. They built a thing whose full beauty they could never quite see from where they stood. They had to imagine it, and then they had to believe their imagining was true. Think how much faith that takes to set stone after stone toward a perfection you cannot yet see, to trust the plan and the math and the steady hand, season after season. They were building blind, in a sense, building toward a picture that lived only in the architect's head. And when at last the scaffolds came down, it was right. It matched the dream. That first sight of the finished thing must have been a quiet kind of wonder, even to the people who had made it. Then there is the dome itself, the great white crown of the whole thing, the shape that fills every picture. From outside it swells high and full, a tall and graceful curve lifting against the sky, seeming almost to float free of the building beneath it. But step inside, in under it, into the cool hush of the chamber, and the ceiling above you is much lower than you would ever expect from what you saw without. That is because it is not one dome at all, but two, one built inside the other, a lower inner dome shaped to make the chamber below feel right and human and enclosing, and a taller outer dome shaped to make the building soar and announce itself across the whole valley. The space between the two is hollow, a hidden volume of dark air no one ever enters. The builders understood that the view from inside and the view from outside ask for entirely different shapes, and so rather than compromise, they simply built both, one nested gently within the other, and let no one be the wiser. Think about what it means to build for one spot. The illusions only work from where a person stands. The letters look even from the ground. The towers look straight from below. The dome looks tall from across the garden. The builders imagined you there before you were ever born. They pictured a person standing, looking up, and they shaped the whole of it to meet that person's eye. In a way, they were building for you, for tonight, for whoever stands there now, and whoever will stand there long after. They could not know your face, but they knew you would come. They knew someone would always come, and look up, and feel that strange calm, and they made the stone ready for it. They left a gift set in marble for a stranger they would never meet. There is something moving in that, to work so hard on a thing you will not see finished, to shape it for eyes not yet born. The masters who tuned those letters are long gone, but the letters still read as even this very night. For anyone who looks, the gift is still being given. It has not stopped. It will not stop. And there is one more trick, perhaps the strangest and most quietly playful of them all. As you walk toward the building through its great red gateway, the Taj does not seem to grow larger, the way things ought to as you approach them. It seems, if anything, to hold its size, or even to draw slightly back, to keep a little of its distance from you, as if it were in no hurry to be reached. And then, when you turn at last to leave, walking away from it, it can seem to grow, to swell, to follow you with its eyes, reluctant to let you go. This is a careful play of framing and proportion, of how the dark arch of the gate holds the white tomb cradled inside it as you move. But the feeling it leaves behind is almost tender, almost human, as though the building were a little shy of being approached, and then quietly sorry to be left alone again. Sit with one more thought about all this seeming. The builders could not test any of it the way we would. They had no models on a screen, no way to stand back 400 years and check. They had geometry, they had experience, they had the eye trained over a lifetime of a master who had seen many buildings rise, and they had faith in their own calculations. They drew the lean of a tower and the growing letters and the double dome, and they trusted that once built it would all come right. And it did. That is its own kind of marvel, to get it right the first time, in stone, with no way back. Think about how patient that kind of work must make a person. You cut a block, you shape it, you set it, and it is set forever. There is no undoing a piece of marble. A wrong cut is a ruined stone, weeks of harling wasted. So every motion had to be sure, measure and measure again, and only then cut. The whole building is the sum of a million careful, unhurried, certain motions. Not one of them rushed, not one of them careless. You can almost feel that care when you stand before it, even if you do not know its name. And notice what all the cleverness is for. It is not for show. It does not call attention to itself. A leaning tower that looks straight does not say, "Look how clever I am." It simply looks straight and lets you rest. Letters that grow with height do not announce their trick. They simply read as even, and you move on soothed. The whole purpose of all that hidden labor is to remove every small thing that might snag the eye or trouble the mind, to leave you with nothing to puzzle over, to leave you, in the end, with calm. That is a generous kind of art. It hides its own effort so that you can rest. It does the hard thinking so that you do not have to. Most things in the world ask something of us. They want our attention, our worry, our work. But this building was made to ask nothing, to simply be looked at, and to give back peace. There are not many made things you can say that of. Let all of that rest lightly on you now. You do not need to hold the cleverness in your mind, or remember how any of it is done. You only need to know that everywhere you might look, someone 400 years ago thought patiently about how your eye would move across the stone, and then bent that stone by a hair, by a whisper, to meet you there. The marble we touched in the earlier hours, the flowers carried from 3 continents, the white tomb framed in deep red, all of it was set inside this larger, quieter game of seeming. Nothing here was left to chance, and yet, and this is the strangest part, the whole effect of it is not of calculation at all. It is of calm, of rest. That is perhaps the deepest trick of the entire place, to take so very much careful thought, so much measuring and correcting and hidden labor, and to leave behind, for anyone who stands there, only peace. So far we have stayed close to the stone, the hard, the shaped, the clever, the standing stone. But the builders did not only raise a tomb of marble. Around it, all around it, they laid out a garden, green and watered and full of quiet meaning, and it is into that garden and into the smaller living things that filled it that we now gently turn. Beyond the marble and before the marble and all around it, there is green. We forget the garden sometimes because the white tomb takes the eye and holds it, but the garden is fully half the meaning of the place, and it was planned with as much thought and as much care as any wall or any dome. It is laid out in a pattern with an old and gentle name, a chaba, which means simply 4 gardens. A great square of green divided into 4 equal parts by 2 long raised walkways that cross at the center, and along those walkways run channels of still, clear water. The shape is not decoration only, not merely a pleasing pattern. It is a picture. It is meant to be a picture of paradise itself. In the old descriptions of the Garden of Heaven, 4 rivers flow out from a single central source, dividing the world of the blessed into 4 quarters. So the garden here is built to be a small earthly model of that promised place, that garden beyond the world. To walk its quiet paths is to walk in miniature through paradise, to walk toward the tomb of someone the builder believed had gone on ahead of him into the real garden, the one this one only gestures toward. Walk one of the long paths slowly in your mind. The water runs beside you in its channel, straight and calm and bright. Cypress rise on either hand, dark and tall. The white tomb waits at the end, far off, growing no nearer for a long while. There is no hurry in this garden. The path is long on purpose. You are meant to walk it slowly. You are meant to arrive only after a while. That slowness is part of the gift. A grand building could have stood right at the gate, filling your eye at once, but not here. Here you must cross the whole green square to reach it. You must give it time, and in that time the noise of the world falls away behind you. By the time you reach the marble, you are quiet inside. The garden has done its work. It has slowed you down. We could learn from a path like that. So much of our days is arrival without approach. We rush to the thing. We are there before we are ready, but the garden insists on the approach. It makes the slowness beautiful. It says there is no need to hurry. The marble is not going anywhere. Walk, breathe, arrive when you arrive, where the four channels meet. At the very heart of the square, there is a raised pool of water. On a still day with no wind, it holds the sky perfectly, a second sky laid flat upon the ground, and it holds, if you stand in just the right place, the white reflection of the tomb itself, so that the building appears twice over, once in solid stone, rising, and once in trembling water, hanging upside down, softer and dreaming. The water was never only beautiful, though. In the deep heat of an Indian summer, it cooled the air that moved across it, and the long straight channels drew the eye forward, always forward, toward the marble, the way a path of light will draw you across a darkened room, toward an open door. Now here is something subtly unusual, and you might pass it 100 times and never notice it unless someone quietly pointed it out. In the ordinary char bar, in the usual pattern, the most important thing, the pavilion or the tomb or the throne, sits at the very center where the two paths cross and the four rivers meet. That is the rule. That is where the heart of the garden is meant to be. But here at the Taj, the rule is gently broken. The tomb does not stand at the center of its garden at all. It stands instead at the far end, raised up on a terrace above the river, with the whole green expanse laid out in front of it like a long approach, like an offering. The center of the garden, where you would most expect to find the building, holds only that quiet, still pool and the open sky reflected in it. Scholars have wondered about this for a very long time, turning it over gently. Perhaps it was done to set the white marble against the open sky and the wide river behind it, with nothing at all crowding it, nothing competing. Perhaps the garden was meant to be understood as somehow larger than its walls, with the river itself counted as one more of its waters, and the true center lying out there, unseen beyond the stone. Whatever the reason was, the effect upon anyone who walks it is the same. You walk the entire length of paradise to reach her. The distance itself is part of the design. The longing is built into the ground. Imagine the pool at the center on a windless evening. The water is glass. The sky lies in it, upside down. The white tomb lies in it too, soft and pale and trembling at the edges. Two buildings now, one of stone rising, one of water hanging below. The real one is solid and sure. The reflected one shivers at the smallest touch of air. A leaf falls. The water rings. The pale tomb breaks into pieces, and then slowly gathers itself and is whole again. There is something to watch in that for a long, quiet while. The stone tomb never moves, the water tomb never holds still. The same shape in two natures, one that endures, one that flows, and the garden holds them both, the lasting and the passing, side by side all evening, without choosing between them. The light is going gold now over the water, the reflection warms, the channels run with soft fire, and the birds are beginning to come in. Let the garden fill slowly now with living things, and let your own breathing slow to the pace of it. In its first centuries this was not the trimmed and open lawn that visitors cross today. It was dense and fragrant and fruitful, planted thick with fruit trees and flowering shrubs, with rows of tall dark cypress standing narrow and straight along the paths like quiet sentinels keeping a long watch. The cypress in that old tradition was the tree of morning and of eternity, dark and unchanging through every season, and the fruit trees, heavy and generous, were the trees of life. The two were planted deliberately together, grief and life side by side, the dark and the sweet, the way they always seem to come in the end. There would have been the scent of blossom drifting heavy on the spring air. There would have been ripe fruit hanging warm and low in the long summer months, and the hum of bees among the flowers, and there would have been birds. There always are in a watered garden set down in a dry land. A garden with water in it is a kind of promise to every winged thing for miles. Picture them at dusk, then coming in low over the channels, dipping to the water, settling in soft commotions into the dark cypress, a gentle riot of wings and small voices as the light goes from gold to grey. Green parakeets perhaps, flashing against the green of the leaves, doves with their low, round, rolling call that sounds like contentment itself, the still water holding the very last of the light, long after the paths have gone to shadow, and somewhere among it all, a gardener, moving slowly along a path with simple tools, doing the small and endless and patient work that any garden always needs, asking nothing, noticed by no one. Stay in the garden a while. There is no hurry to leave it. Think of the water moving through it, slow and constant. It had to come from somewhere. It was lifted from the river and carried inward through channels to feed the long pools and the thirsty trees. The sound of it would have been everywhere, soft and low, water moving in stone channels, water falling somewhere, gently. In a hot, dry land, that sound is the sound of wealth, and of mercy, and of rest. To make water move where you want it is one of the oldest powers there is. The garden is full of that quiet power, spent only on beauty. Think of the shade, too. After the white glare of the marble, the garden would have been a relief to the eye. Cool greens, deep shadows under the fruit trees, dappled light on the paths. The marble is for awe, the garden is for ease. One lifts you up, the other lets you down softly. The builders knew you needed both. They knew that beauty without rest is only exhausting. So they gave the eye somewhere green to land. And think of the seasons turning through it, year after year. The blossom in spring, heavy and white and sweet, the fruit in summer, warm and low, the leaves in their slow change, the bare branches in the cool months, and then the blossom again. The marble never changes. That is its glory and its sorrow. But the garden lives and dies a little, and lives again, over and over, the way we do. Grief set in stone, and life set in green, planted side by side, so that one might soften the other. Picture the cypress at dusk, dark and tall and straight. They do not change with the seasons. They stay green and dark all year, while the fruit trees blossom and bear and blossom again around them. So the garden holds both at once, the tree that never changes, and the trees that always do, the steady and the passing, planted in the same soft ground. It is a quiet picture of how grief and life live together, one dark and constant, one forever coming back into bloom. It is a kind, wise way to build a place of mourning, not all stone, not all silence, but trees and birds and running water and fruit you could reach up and pick, a reminder planted all around the tomb that life goes on, that the world is still green, that even beside the deepest loss, the blossom comes again in spring, asking nothing, simply arriving the way it always has. The great drama of the building, the 20,000 workers, the stone hauled from the far ends of the earth, the clever bending of the light, all of it softens here in the garden into something far quieter, just a green and growing place at evening, water in it, trees around it, and birds coming home to roost as the day lets go. This is the gentlest layer of the whole place, the green and breathing skin laid softly over all that stone. But beneath the garden, and beneath the marble, and beneath everything we have seen, there is something we have not yet spoken of at all. The hidden part, the part no visitor ever sees or thinks of, that holds the entire impossible weight of it up and out of the soft wet earth beside the river. Let us go down now, quietly, into the dark, to the foundations. Everything we have seen so far has been the part that shows. The white dome lifting against the sky, the colored flowers in the walls, the green garden with its still water, the leaning towers and the soaring double dome. But none of it, not one stone of it, could stand for a single season without the part that no one ever sees and almost no one ever thinks about, the foundations, the dark, patient, hidden work, far down beneath the ground. It is easy to forget the ground when you look at a building. We see the walls, the dome, the towers. We never think of what is under our feet, holding it all. But every great thing that stands must stand on something, and the something is usually hidden, and usually forgotten, and usually the hardest part of all. The builders chose, in truth, a difficult place. The bank of the Yamuna is a floodplain, which is to say the soil there is soft and damp and prone to shifting, made of fine silt the river has laid down, layer on layer, over uncounted years of rising and falling. It is not the firm, dry rock you would dream of having beneath the heaviest building of its entire age, and a great weight set down upon soft ground does exactly what a foot does in mud. it sinks slowly and unevenly, one side a little faster than the other, and in time what sinks unevenly begins to lean, and what leans begins to crack, and what cracks begins eventually to fall. The builders knew all of this in their bones and from long experience, and so, before any marble at all was raised into the light, they spent themselves and years on a problem the world would never see and never praise. They dug down deep into the wet earth where the great tomb would one day stand. They sank wells and packed them and built carefully upon them so that the enormous weight above would be carried down, down, past the soft and treacherous upper soil to firmer ground far below. Timber was set into the damp earth as part of that hidden base, and here, in a quiet turn that feels almost like a kindness, the river itself, the very thing that made the ground so difficult, became a silent ally, for wood that is kept constantly wet, sealed away from the open air beneath the level of the water and the ground, does not rot the way wood in the dry air rots. The very dampness that threatened the building also preserved the timber that helped to hold it steady. There is a gentle justice folded into that, if you sit with it. The river that made the work so hard also quietly helped the work to last. There is one small detail from the building of those foundations that I find quietly moving, and I want to give it to you slowly. The accounts tell of a separate well dug nearby, not to hold anything up, not to carry any weight at all, but simply so that the builders could look down into it and see the level of the water standing in the ground, a way to watch patiently over the long passing years whether the water beneath the great structure was rising or falling, whether the unseen conditions that held everything up were quietly changing season by season in the dark. Think of that for a moment. Among 20,000 laboring hands and the gathered wealth of an entire empire, and stones summoned from 3 continents, someone thought to dig one single quiet shaft and to keep it, just to keep an eye on the water. The humblest possible instrument, a hole in the ground, and the patience to look down into it again and again year after year, and to take note of what it showed. So much of this place is grand beyond grasping, but that one small well is human-sized. It is the worry of a careful builder made into something you could walk up to and peer into. Someone cared whether it would last. Someone kept watch. Stay with the hidden work a little longer. It is the most restful part of the whole story. Think of how long it took before anything showed. Years perhaps of digging and packing and waiting. The emperor would have come to look and seen only a great wound in the earth, a pit by the river, mud and timber and men carrying baskets. No marble, no dome, nothing to admire, only the slow, dull, unglamorous work of making the ground ready to hold a dream. And he had to trust it. He had to believe that all this digging in the dark would one day carry something beautiful into the light. There is a patience in foundations that the rest of us could learn from. Nothing visible, no reward yet, only the quiet certainty that what you do now, unseen, will hold up everything that comes later. The deepest work is always like that, the work no one claps for, the work that simply has to be sound, whether anyone sees it or not. And think how still it is down there now, 400 years on. The dome above has been admired by millions, but the wells below have never once been seen by a visitor. They have done their work in perfect darkness, in perfect silence. All this time, no light has ever reached them, no eye has ever found them, and yet without them nothing. The whole white wonder rests every single day on a darkness no one will ever look at. There is a strange peace in that, to be essential and unseen, and to mind it not at all. The river helps, as we said. The wet earth that should have been the enemy became the friend. The timber, kept always under water, does not rot, but only waits, patient and sound, holding its load in the dark. Everything down there has settled into a long, slow agreement with the river. The water rises a little, the water falls a little, and the great building, balanced on its hidden wells, simply goes on standing, year after year after year, asking nothing, troubling no one, holding still. Let your mind rest down there now for a little while, in the cool and the dark, far beneath all the beauty. It is a strange and soothing thing to picture. Above, the white marble catches the sun, and one day great crowds will stand before it and fall silent. But below, in the deep silence, sit the packed wells and the wet timber and the firm-driven earth, doing their slow and thankless work, asking for no admiration at all, expecting none, simply holding everything up. Most of what keeps a thing standing is never seen by anyone. That is true of buildings. It is true perhaps of a great many things, and a great many people, if you let the thought wander. Picture the men who did that digging. They worked in mud and damp and the dim light of lamps. They went down where it was cool and close and dark. They carried the earth out in baskets. They set the timber. They watched the water seep and baled it and dug deeper still. It was hard, wet, thankless work, and no one would ever see it. No visitor would ever praise it. It would vanish the moment the marble rose above into the dark forever. But they did it well. We know they did, because the building still stands. 400 years, floods and droughts, and the slow shifting of the soil, and still it stands, level and true, on the work of those unseen hands in the mud. They never knew, perhaps, how well they had done. They only knew the day's digging. But their work has held a wonder up for centuries, in silence, in the dark, asking nothing. There is a quiet dignity in that, to do the hidden work well, to make the foundation sound, whether or not the world will ever know. The dome gets the photographs, the wells get the weight, and the wells have never once complained. And above those foundations, up inside the tomb itself, there is another kind of quiet altogether, the quiet of faith. The inner chamber stays cool even in the worst of the summer heat, dim and hushed, and wrapped about with carved marble screens so fine and so pierced that they look like lace cut somehow from solid stone, lace you could hold to the light. The verses chosen for the walls in there are gentle ones, words of mercy and of rest and of a garden promised to those who have gone on ahead. The whole building, when you stand inside it in that cool dim hush, stops being a feat of engineering and a marvel of logistics, and quietly becomes again what it was always, underneath, meant to be. A prayer made solid, a wish set in stone and held up out of the mud, that someone, somewhere, beyond all of this, is finally and fully at peace. Step into that cool dark for a moment in your mind. Outside, the sun is fierce. Inside, it is dim and still and cool as a cave. The light comes soft through the carved stone screens, broken into small patterns on the floor. Your eyes adjust slowly. The noise of the world is gone. The heat is gone. There is only the hush and the cool air and the pale light and the deep quiet of a place set apart. It is the kind of quiet that makes you lower your voice without deciding to, the kind that slows your step. People come into that chamber loud, and within moments they are still. The building does that to them. It asks for stillness, gently, without a word, and people give it. They cannot help it. The stone itself seems to ask for calm. There is a single sound that visitors still speak of in that high-domed chamber, in low voices, the way you speak in a sacred place. A whisper or a soft sung note will rise up into the great dome and linger there, echoing on far longer than seems natural or possible, fading so slowly that you cannot say for certain when it has truly ended and the silence has returned. A single breath becomes a long-held, trembling chord that hangs in the dark above you. It is only the shape of the dome doing what such shapes do with sound. But standing there, it does not feel like physics. It feels like the building itself answering you gently from somewhere high up, telling you only to be still, to be quiet, to rest. So we have gone all the way down to the wells waiting in the dark, and all the way in to the hushed, cool chamber where the light comes soft through stone lace. We have seen the whole of it now, from the deepest hidden stone to the highest singing dome. What remains in the hours that are left to us is only to watch, to let the light move slowly over all of it, and to let the day go. So come back up with me now, gently, into the open air and into the changing light. Now let the work be finished. Let the wagons and the scaffolds and the great crowd of 20,000 be gone, faded back into time. Let the dust settle for the last time. What is left, standing alone beside the river, is the marble and the sky and the slow turning of the light across it all through a single ordinary day. We will not learn anything new now. The facts are all behind us. From here we will only watch and breathe and let the light do what it does. There is no better way to end our long night together than this, to stop telling and simply watch. The story is told. The building stands. Now we only sit with it, through one slow turning of the light, and let it carry us towards sleep. So settle a little deeper. Let the body grow heavy. We are only going to watch the light now. Nothing more. Watch it come and change and go. Soft work for the eyes, soft work for the mind, the kind of watching that asks nothing and slowly closes the eyes on its own. Begin before the dawn, when the river is still grey and the air is cool and the whole garden is full of soft mist. The marble in this early hour is not white. White is the daytime word for it, the noon word. Before the sun comes, the stone is a pale, soft, uncertain thing, almost blue, almost the very color of the misted water, holding the last of the night still inside it. The tall cypress trees stand black against a sky that is only just beginning to think about the light. The long water channels lie flat and silver and perfectly still. Nothing moves at all but the slow drifting of the mist across the empty paths. It is the quietest hour there is, the hour that belongs to no one. Then the sun comes up, slowly, over the far bank of the river, and the very first light reaches across and touches the dome, and the marble blushes. There is no other honest word for it. It turns faintly rose, faintly pink, the way a cheek warms in the cold, the high curve of the great dome catching that first warmth, while the lower walls are all still deep in shadow. The flowers we spoke of, the inlaid blossoms of lapis and carnelian and jade, begin to wake within their stone, their colors slowly deepening and gathering as the climbing light finally finds them and draws them out. The garden fills all at once with the voices of birds. The reflection in the central pool turns from cold gray to a soft warm gold, and for a little while in the early morning, the whole vast place is simply the color of the dawn itself, as if it had been made of dawn, as if you could reach out and gather a handful of the early light. Watch the rose hour while it lasts. It is brief. The light moves quickly at dawn. The pink does not stay long. It touches the dome and warms the high curve, and then begins already to pale. You have only a little while to see the marble blush, and then it is gone for the day, until tomorrow's dawn. There is something tender in a beauty that brief. It cannot be kept. You cannot hold it. You can only be there and see it and let it pass. The rose comes, the rose goes, every single morning, whether anyone is watching or not. A small, soft, faithful thing, given freely to the empty garden and the early birds and no one else. The mist is lifting now off the channels. The water brightens. The birds are loud in the trees. The day is truly beginning. The cool of the night is burning away, and the marble which was blue and then rose is turning slowly toward white. As the sun climbs higher, the rose slowly fades, and the marble becomes at last what the pictures all show: white, brilliant and plain and clean, almost too bright to look at directly when the sun is near its height, every carved line standing sharp, every shadow grown small and hard beneath the eaves and the arches. It is the marble everyone knows, the marble of the photographs, the marble the whole world pictures when it hears the name, white against blue, clean and bright and sure. But you know more than that now. You have seen it blue at dawn and rose at sunrise. You know the white is only 1 hour of many. The pictures catch a single moment. The stone lives through them all. This is the marble at its most certain, its most finished, its most sure of itself. The double dome floats free above it all. The leaning towers stand their slight secret slant that no one sees. The bands of calligraphy climb their corrected ladder of letters, each one larger than the last so that all seem the same, and not one of these clever, careful things announces itself to the watching crowds. There is only the calm white building standing in the full flat light of the middle of the day, doing quietly, perfectly, all the patient work it was so carefully built to do. The middle of the day is long and bright and even. The marble holds the white for hours. The shadows are small. The garden is hot. The birds grow quiet in the heat. Few people linger in the open glare. The building stands alone in the full sun, patient, unhurried, doing nothing but being looked at from a distance. It is a good time to simply rest the eyes on it. Nothing changes quickly now. The light is steady. The white is steady. You could look away for an hour and look back and find it just the same. There is a deep calm in things that hold still. The morning rushed with its rose and its mist. The evening will rush again with its gold. But the middle of the day is wide and slow and unchanging. A long, bright, quiet pause. Let the day rest at its height for a moment. The sun overhead, the marble white, the shadows small and sharp, and then, so slowly you cannot catch it happening, the light begins to lengthen again. Then slowly, without any moment you could point to, the long day begins to lean over toward the evening, and the light begins to warm again. The hard white softens to cream, and then to a faint warm ivory, and then, as the sun drops low and red toward the far horizon, to gold. The long shadows return, stretching out across the garden the way they did at dawn, but reaching the other way now, eastward, into the coming dark. The red sandstone of the mosque and the gateway and the long walls glows deep and warm, almost burning, and the white tomb floats gold above all that red, lit as if from within. The pool holds the whole of it again, doubled and trembling and gold. The birds come back to settle in the cypress, calling, jostling, and the day folds itself slowly, gently closed. This is the deep rhythm the building was given on the day the last hand finally left it. Rose and then white and then gold. Around and around and around, day after day after day. Longer now by far than anyone who built it could ever have imagined or dared to hope. It has watched 400 springs come quietly into the garden. It has felt 400 summers heat its marble through. It has stood under 400 seasons of monsoon rain, running in long grey ropes down its smooth sides. The workers are long, long gone. The emperor is long gone. The grief that began the whole of it, the death in a tent so far away, has softened over the centuries into something that is almost only beauty now, almost only light. And still, every single morning, the stone comes up rose and burns to white and falls away to gold, and takes each color in its slow turn and gives it gently back to the sky. Watch the light a little longer. Let it move slowly across the stone, and let your eyes follow it. Think how many mornings this has happened. The marble has blushed rose at dawn more times than anyone could count. It did it the morning the last worker went home. It did it the morning the emperor died. It did it through wars, and through quiet years, and through the long passing of every generation since. The same soft rose every dawn on the same white stone. No one had to be there to see it. It happened anyway. It is happening now, somewhere, whether we watch or not. That is a calming thing to hold. The world keeps its small, beautiful habits with or without us. The light comes up, the marble warms, the birds wake in the garden. None of it needs our attention to go on. None of it asks anything of us at all. We can watch it and be soothed, or we can close our eyes, and it will go on without us, just the same. There is a great freedom in that. We do not have to hold the world together. It holds itself. Think too how the marble gives the light back. It does not keep it. The rose of dawn, the white of noon, the gold of dusk. It takes each one and holds it for a while and lets it go. It clings to nothing. The next light always comes, and the stone simply turns to meet it. Maybe that is something the stone could teach us on a quiet night. To take what comes, to hold it lightly, to let it go when its hour is over, and to trust that the next light will come, as it always has, as it always will. The day is nearly gone now. The gold is thinning on the dome. The shadows are long and soft across the empty garden. Soon the last color will fade, and the gray will come, and then the dark. And in the dark there is one more light still waiting, the gentlest of them all. But we are getting ahead. For now, just watch the gold go. Slowly, quietly, the way everything goes in the end. There is a deep, deep rest in watching something that does the same gentle thing forever, without effort, without complaint, without end. You do not have to do anything at all. You do not have to remember anything, or solve anything, or carry anything. You only have to watch the light change across the stone, and let it change you a little too, and let the day that you have had drain quietly away into the slow river, the way every single day before it has drained away, and every day after it will. And now, even as we watch, the gold is fading. The garden is going slowly to shadow. The last of the birds are settling into the dark trees. There is one more turn of the light still to come, the softest and the quietest of them all. And for that one, we only have to wait, to breathe, and to let the dark come gently down over everything. The dark comes down softly now. The gold has gone from the dome. The garden has become a place of shapes and shadows, the cypress darker than the deep blue sky behind them, the long paths pale and empty between them. The birds have gone quiet in the branches, tucked away still. The day is over. There is nothing left of it now but the cooling air and the first stars. For a while there is no light at all but the last of the dusk. The sky deepens, blue, and then darker blue, and then almost black. The first stars come out, one by one, over the dome. The marble is grey now, a soft pale grey, like ash, like the inside of a shell. It waits. The garden waits. The river waits. Everything is holding its breath in the gap between the day and the moon. The heat is leaving the stone. You could almost feel it if you laid a hand against the marble, warm still from the long day. slowly cooling, giving the day's warmth back to the night air, the whole building breathing out after the long bright day, letting go of the heat, settling toward the cool and the dark. The paths are empty now. They have been empty for hours. The last visitor is long gone. The last bird has settled. There is no one here but you, and the quiet, and the waiting stone. It is a good kind of alone, the kind that asks nothing, the kind where you can let your shoulders down, and your thoughts slow, and simply be. The river is louder now, in the quiet, or it only seems so, with everything else gone still. That low, even sound, water moving in the dark. It was here before the marble. It will be here after. It does not care about the dome, or the emperor, or the grief. It only flows, slow and patient and old. The same sound, all night, every night, forever. And then the moon, when the moon is full and high over the slow river, the marble does its last and softest thing of all. It glows, not gold now, and not rose, but a pale, cool silver blue, the very color of the night around it, as though the building had quietly stored away a little of all the day's light, and were letting it back out now, slowly, gently, into the dark. The great dome becomes a soft pale lamp hung above the sleeping garden. The 4 minarets stand pale and still at their corners, and the whole enormous weight of the place seems to lose its weight entirely and simply float there in the dark, gentle, weightless, half a dream you might be having. The water in the long channels is black now, and still, and it holds the moon. It holds the pale shape of the tomb as well, doubled once again, the way it has patiently held every light of the whole long day, but softer now, trembling only a very little when some small breath of air crosses it. There is almost no wind. The flowers in the marble, the blossoms carried in pieces from the ends of the earth, are sleeping now in their stone, their bright colors gone to soft gray in the dark, waiting without any worry for the morning that will surely come and wake them once again. They are in no hurry at all. They have all the time there has ever been. Let your eyes move slowly over it all, one last time. The pale dome, the 4 still towers, the long dark channels, the empty silver paths, the black shapes of the cypress against the stars. Take it in gently. There is no need to hold it. Just let it be there, in front of you, glowing softly in the dark. The flowers in the walls are grey now, sleeping. The letters above the great arch are dim. The hidden wells are deep below, in the dark, doing their quiet work. The whole long story we followed is here, folded into this one still shape under the moon. The grief, the hands, the stone from far away, all of it quiet now, all of it at rest. The river moves past below the high terrace the way it always has, and always will, slow and patient and quiet and dark. You can barely hear it from here, only a soft sound, low and even and unbroken, a sound that was going on long, long before the very first stone was ever laid, and that will go on, unhurried, long after. It asks nothing of you, that sound. It expects nothing. It is only the sound of water moving through the dark, the oldest and the gentlest sound there is, the sound that was here before all the building and will be here after. Let us stay here in the moonlight and not move at all. The air is cool now. The heat of the day is lifted. A faint coolness rises off the river and drifts across the garden. It carries the last of the night-blooming scent. It moves the surface of the water just barely. Then it settles, and the water goes still again. The marble is pale. The dome is pale. The towers are pale. Everything that was white by day is silver now. The flowers in the walls have gone to grey. They are sleeping. They will wake at dawn, as they always do. But not yet, for now they rest, like everything else. The garden paths are empty. No one walks them. The cypress stand dark and still. The fruit trees are only soft shapes now. The birds are tucked into the branches, quiet, their small heads beneath their wings. Even they are asleep. The whole green world has gone quiet around the glowing stone. The marble seems to hold its own faint light now, as though it had drunk the sun all day, and gives a little back at night. A soft, cool glow from the stone itself. It is only the moon, of course, resting on the white, but it looks like the building is quietly shining. A pale lamp left burning low in the middle of a dark and sleeping garden. Nothing else shines. The trees are black. The water is black. The sky is deep and dark and full of stars. Only the marble glows, soft and pale and patient, in the center of all that dark, watching over the empty garden, holding the only light there is. Listen to how little there is to hear. The soft sound of the river, low and even, a breath of air in the leaves, and then nothing. Somewhere, far off, perhaps a single night bird, then quiet again. The quiet is not empty, it is full, full of rest, full of the long peace of a place where the work is finally done. The moon climbs a little higher. The shadows shift, slowly, across the marble. The reflection in the pool slides and settles. Nothing is in a hurry here. Nothing has anywhere to be. The night is long and wide, and there is time for all of it. Time to simply be still. Think of all the nights this stone has stood through. 400 years of moons. 400 years of stars wheeling slowly overhead. The same dome, the same river, the same soft silver light. Night after night after night, the marble has glowed, and the water has held the moon, and no one has needed to do anything at all. It has simply been beautiful, in the dark, whether anyone was watching or not. Let the picture grow soft at the edges, the dome a pale blur, the towers faint, the garden only darkness now, and the glow of the stone. You do not need to hold it sharp. Let it soften, let it blur, the way things do just before sleep. You are watching now, or you were. Your eyes are heavy. That is good. That is right. You do not have to keep them open. The marble will glow whether you see it or not. The river will run. The moon will cross the sky. You can let your eyes close and rest, and the night will go on holding everything gently, the way it always has. Let the breath grow slow. Let the body grow heavy. The day is far behind you now. The long story is told. There is nothing left to follow, nothing left to know. Only the pale stone, and the dark water, and the slow, slow river, and the moon. Think for one last slow moment of how still it all is now. The wagons are gone, the cook fires are long cold, the chisels are silent in the dark. The 20,000 hands are resting somewhere far back in time, their work all done, their names mostly lost to us forever, and the thing they made with those hands stands here now in the moonlight, perfectly still, glowing softly. All the travel of stone across the world, all that careful labor, all that grief, it has all come down, in the end, to this. A quiet building, glowing low, a dark and sleeping garden, a slow river in the night, and the moon above it all. The moon moves so slowly you cannot see it move, but it moves. The shadows on the marble shift, a little, hour by hour. The reflection slides across the dark pool. The stars wheel very slowly overhead. Everything is moving, and everything seems still. That is the way of the deep night. Time passes but gently, with no edges to it. 1 hour pours into the next, like water, like the slow river below. You do not have to mark it. You do not have to follow the hours. Let them pass without you. Let the moon climb and the shadows turn and the stars move on, all on their own, while you grow still and heavy and warm. There is nothing here to keep track of, nothing to wait for. The night will do what nights do, slowly, kindly, whether you watch or not. There is nothing more to do here now, nothing left to learn, nothing to carry, and nothing to hold. The building does not need you to admire it. The garden does not need you to walk its paths. You can simply be here, in the cool and the quiet and the dark, and let everything be exactly, perfectly as it is. The marble glows. The still water holds the moon, the river moves on, and the soft night settles down over all of it, gentle and complete, tucking it in, so let it settle down over you as well. Let the pale soft light of the marble be the last thing that you see. Let the slow, low sound of the river be the last thing that you hear. There is nowhere you need to go. There is nothing at all left undone. The long, long work is finished now, and the night is wide and dark and kind, and you are safe inside it, warm and held. The dome glows soft in the dark. The garden sleeps beneath the stars. The river runs on, quiet and slow and patient, and that is all. That is everything there is. The night holds the marble, and the marble holds the moon, and you can let go now, gently, softly, into the deep and waiting quiet of it, and so the great work rests. 20 years of mornings, and more than 20,000 patient hands, and stone carried from the very ends of the earth, all of it gathered now into one quiet shape glowing softly under the moon. It began with a loss, far away, on a summer night in a tent, in a place most of those who admire it now have never heard of, and it ends here in stillness, with the river moving slowly in the dark, and the white marble holding the very last of the light. Whatever was carried here across all those years, all that grief and all that care and all that longing has settled at last into something calm. There is nothing left to build now. There is nothing left to carry. The flowers sleep in the stone. The garden sleeps beneath the cypress and the stars. The water lies still and holds the moon. You have come the whole long way, from the first marked out ground beside the river to this final deep quiet, and there is nowhere further you need to go tonight, and nothing further you need to do. We followed the grief that began it. We followed the thousands of hands that built it. We followed the stone across half the world, and the clever bending of the light, and the garden, and the hidden wells in the dark. And now there is nothing left to follow. The whole long road has led gently here to the quiet, to the rest. So let the picture soften now. Let the pale dome blur gently into the dark. Let the river's slow and even sound carry the last of your thoughts away downstream, where you do not have to follow them, where they will be carried for you. The day you had is finished. It asked of you whatever it asked, and now it is done, and you can set the whole of it down. There is no more road to walk tonight, no more stone to carry, no more light to chase across the marble. The work that took 20 years is finished, and has been finished for centuries, and will go on standing in the dark whether you watch it or not. You can set it down now. You can let it stand without you. It does not need you to keep it. It only asks that you rest. Let your shoulders grow heavy against the bed. Let the warmth gather softly around you. Let the soft glow of the marble fade, like a lamp turned slowly, slowly low, until there is only the dark and the quiet and the slow breathing of the river. There is nothing more to hold on to now. Nothing pulls you forward. Nothing waits to be done. You are safe. You are warm. And the night is wide and gentle all around you. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts settle like petals coming softly to rest on still water. Let everything go soft. Close your eyes now. The marble glows low. The river runs slow. The garden is still. Let your breath grow long. Let the dark grow kind. There is nothing to do. There is nowhere to be. Just rest now. Just rest. Sleep well. Sleep well.